Arc Raiders is finally here, boys, and I've been grinding quite a bit. If you're a brand new player and you've never played the alpha or the beta or any of that stuff, then today I got you covered with a complete beginner's guide to Arc Raiders. And if you enjoyed today's content, like and subscribe, yada yada yada. Okay, enough intro, let's go. Why don't we start off with key settings and input changes you need to make. Before you even jump into your first match, you should really make sure you go into your settings and remap a few important keybinds that you should be taking advantage of a lot in-game. I mean, if you're okay with whatever keys they're bound to by default, that's fine, but I kinda hated what the default input of certain moves was, and I had to change them right away. The three main inputs you should make sure you're very comfortable with hitting are crouching, dodge roll, and shoulder swap. Crouching is good for moving quietly, but you can also hit that button when sprinting downhill, and you'll do a really fun slide that goes for a while without really burning too much stamina. Overall, probably not as important as the other two moves, but still a good button to keep close. Dodging is definitely a bit more handy. Hit the button and you do a little forward tumble. Again, handy for getting to cover in the middle of a firefight, so make sure it is bound to a key that you have easy access to. Shoulder swapping is majorly important though, and one you absolutely should make sure is bound to a button you can easily reach and that you're comfortable with. I think the default key for mouse and keyboard players is X, and there's no way I'm not changing that. Anyway, hitting that button will change the position of your over-the-shoulder camera, which is incredibly helpful when you're trying to shoot another person from cover. For example, pretend that there is a player up ahead that I wanted to shoot, and I'm trying to stealthily approach that player from this corner. What angle do you think would make it easier for me to hit them? This or this? If you answered this angle, you probably pour milk before cereal, but yeah, the correct answer is this angle, because the camera angle is way more advantageous at this particular piece of cover. So yeah, make sure all of those actions are bound to keys that you can hit comfortably in the middle of a match, because you will be doing all of them a lot. Oh, and one more thing, go into your audio settings and make sure your mic is set to push to talk, not open mic. And the reason for that is that if you're running around yapping on the mic with your buddies, which is totally fine and encouraged, you just want to make sure that no other nearby players can hear you yapping via proximity chat. If other players nearby can hear you talking, they can and will find you. And unless they're incredibly nice people, the smart money says they will try to kill you and take all of your stuff. So yeah, go push to talk only and thank me later. We'll get to loadouts in a minute, but for now I want to go over how a basic match usually goes. Here's how your average match of Arc Raiders will go if you're a new player. When the match begins, you'll be dropped into a random spawning location on the map, usually in good cover. Remember, it's possible you're being dropped into a fresh brand new map that is just starting up, or you could be dropped into a game in progress. I recommend opening up the map right away to figure out where you are, and more importantly, where you want to go. Yellow zones on your map indicate an area that should have moderately decent loot, while red zones on your map are locations that should be more likely to have higher value loot. Naturally, if you want to go all in at the chance of getting the best loot possible, you want to go to a red zone. But you do have to remember that good loot ain't free, meaning A, there's a high probability of that red loot area crawling with arc robots waiting to kick your ass, and B, you have to consider the fact that other teams might also be thinking, oh hell yeah, red loot zone baby, and might also be on the way to the same area where you are going. I'd say that depending on how confident your team is, and depending on how good all of your loadouts are, y'all should probably make a group decision on whether to go to a yellow zone or a red zone right off the bat. I usually like to go to red zones if I have a good loadout, but then again, if you have a free loadout, I mean, you could still go to a red zone because technically you have nothing to lose. And if you don't know what a free loadout is, by the way, kind of self-explanatory, but more on that later. Now, eventually at some point during a match, the following is going to happen. You're either going to hear nearby gunfire, or you're going to see this, a signal flare launching way up into the air. A signal flare gets shot up out of another player's body when they go down. So if you're seeing signal flares or hearing nearby gunfire, it means combat is going on nearby. When that happens, y'all need to make a group decision. Do you either A, ignore and keep looting the area where you are, or B, head directly directly towards the nearby commotion in an attempt to swoop in and kill whatever players might be there. And there's no right or wrong answer. For me though, unless I'm very weak and have no healing options, or if I'm basically full on loot already, 99% of the time I go for option B and head towards the commotion. Reason being is that IMO, you have a much higher chance of getting great loot off a dead enemy player as opposed to just finding really good loot in the environment. And in my opinion, wiping other teams is really fun. But yeah, it's totally up to you though. If you're full up on loot, it's completely a-okay to want to leave rather than risk losing it all in a nearby firefight that you don't really need to engage in. But the short version is, for any match, you pick a location you want to go to, try and go there with your team, try and get a bunch of loot. If you find or hear a nearby team, which you likely will, decide if you want to engage with them or not, which usually depends on how good your loadout is and how much loot y'all are carrying already. And then finally, when you're carrying a lot of loot, open the map and find a good place to extract. And on that note, why don't we talk about how extraction works? When you drop into a match, again, you should check your map to see where you want to go to grab loot, but you should also take a minute to check on nearby extraction timers. Basically, when the timer on an extraction area on your map reaches 0, you will no longer be able to extract at all from that area, and it will get closed off for the rest of the match. Translation: the longer a match goes, the harder it's going to be for y'all to extract, because eventually there will be fewer and fewer extraction points available. So be sure to keep that in mind and try to not wait until the last minute to get out unless you're all very confident. Either way, when you do extract, a couple things to keep in mind. 1, it's gonna make a lot of noise. The first map you'll probably play on is Damn Battlegrounds, and that map features extraction elevators that love to make noise when you call them. Any nearby players will probably recognize the sound of the extraction elevator and might come over to try and ruin your day. Lord knows I've done it to plenty of people in the alpha and the beta because I am not a good person. Be on high alert when you call for extraction, and because it takes a while for the elevator to arrive, maybe don't stand around out in the open. Try to stick to cover until the elevator gets there, and don't get ambushed by any hungry teams running over looking to shoot you with a makeshift hobo gun. 2, extraction areas may be guarded. Arc robots love to patrol extraction areas, so you may have to wait for the exact right moment before running in and calling for evac. Again, stick to cover, and honestly, only really engage with the arc on the way out if you truly need to, aka if they're shooting you and ripping you up and you need to fight back or you're gonna die. More on the arc in a minute. 3, keep in mind that even if you've been downed, you can still extract out of a match. Basically exactly what I said, as long as you're not flat out dead, you can still extract out of a match. So don't give up and keep on crawling. And on that note, why don't we talk about getting downed, reviving, and healing. Getting downed in Arc Raiders is literally inevitable, so don't freak out when it happens. When you've been downed, don't immediately give up or put your controller down or rage quit or whatever. If you're on the mic with your teammates, be sure to give them callouts on where the enemy team is and what they're doing, and also try to crawl to a better position if you can. Just because you're down does not mean that you're out. If you get to a safe location, your teammates can revive and get you back in the fight. On the flip side, if you down an enemy player, depending on where exactly they are, it might be a good idea to thirst that player, aka to basically shoot them until they go from being downed to flat out dead. Admittedly, it's not a very sportsmanlike thing to do, but whatever. It's technically the smart thing to do because you officially no longer have to worry about that player potentially getting revived and getting back in the fight. If you manage to get downed and then revived though, you might want to heal right away, from cover of course. Make sure that you're both repairing your shield if you have one and restoring your health as well before getting back into the fight. You might not always have the opportunity to do this, but it is a good rule of thumb. Why don't we talk about huge mistakes to avoid real quick? I may actually have to make an entire video on this because there's a lot under that category, but we'll keep it to the basics. Mistake number 1, making too much goddamn noise, which may or may not include shooting your gun for no reason, shooting at enemies way too far away for no reason, having your character say in-game voice lines to try and communicate, which is a thing you can do but shouldn't, and engaging with Arc when you don't really need to, which brings me to mistake number 2, engaging with Arc for no reason. Arc robots are tough, especially when you're just starting out. They will take a lot of shots to bring down, and they will fight back. I mean, some Arc do have good materials that you could get, but you really do have to ask yourself, A, how much ammo do you have to spare? B, how much noise is this gonna make? And C, how many healing items do I currently have? Now, don't get me wrong, some bots may have interesting parts that are handy for crafting, but if you don't desperately desperately need those parts, I strongly recommend just avoiding and not engaging with the arc out in the open if you don't need to. This also includes taking out your gun and shooting the arc security cameras that go wah, 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 wah. Perfect impression, by the way. Don't waste your ammo and don't make more noise than you need to. Take out your melee weapon, jump, and break the camera that way. Mistake number 3, not staying together. When looting, you definitely should fan out a little bit and gather supplies. After all, loot is the name of the game. That being said though, don't wander too far away from your teammates. The last thing you want to do is get caught completely off guard by an enemy team and get gunned down in a 1v3. Moving on, quick reminder to the new folk, don't forget about free loadouts. Naturally, the more you play Arc Raiders, the more loot you will get. And you can always choose to bring in whatever you want, your favorite weapons, your favorite grenades, whatever. But don't forget, if you want to, you can always just go in with a completely free loadout. You can do this by first hitting play and then choosing the option for a free loadout. Free loadouts are, in general, pretty not great. They'll equip you with a random non-upgraded weapon when you drop in and some other low-tier items. And while free loadouts most of the time are kinda cheeks, they are great for learning the flow of the game. Or maybe if you just died in the previous game and you lost a ton of good gear and you maybe want to run it back and not risk losing even more good gear, you could just go back in with a free loadout. It's up to you. And hey, if you go in with a 100% free loadout, you've got nothing to lose. It is important to know though that if you're rolling with a free loadout, you won't have access to a safe pocket. If you didn't know, when you're running a regular loadout, you have access to a safe pocket. Basically, if you find a really good item when looting and you want to 100% make sure that you get that item out of the match, even if your entire team dies, shove that bad boy into your safe pocket. The item you have in there will go back to town with you no matter what. But again, the safe pocket is not available on a free loadout, so keep that in mind. Real quick, let's talk about, should you recycle loot or sell it? When you're back in the underground city of Speranza and you're thinking about what to do with your loot, there's usually 3 things you can do. 1, sell it for cash. 2, recycle it, which breaks down most items into their base components. Or 3, you might be able to use it for crafting without breaking it down. And there's really no right answer on what you should do with your loot. A lot of items will have text that says can be recycled into crafting materials right in the description, which is a pretty good sign that you can just recycle it down into components if you want to. Also, if an item says may be worth a few coins and has a little diamond icon on it, that usually means you can just straight up sell it for money. Either way though, there's no right or wrong answer about recycling or selling because you can always get more loot. And on that note, crafting and workshop upgrading. At your workshop back in Speranza, you'll eventually have the option to build additional crafting stations. Keep in mind though, it is not a one-stop shop. There are multiple crafting stations you need, each for different functions. For example, there's a different station for making weapons and a different one for making healing items. You get the idea. You can also upgrade these crafting stations when you gather the right materials, and you should 100% prioritize doing that early on, because while finding useful loot in the wild is cool, being able to make exactly what you need and want is usually better. When you eventually find what crafting items are really important for routine use, be sure to make a mental note of what you need to make them and be on the lookout for them in the wild. For example, here are a few materials I recommend new players be on the lookout for because they can be used to craft the following important items early on. And if you were wondering, bandages are what you use to heal your health bar, and shield rechargers recharge your shield. And remember, you might not always find the raw components themselves, but many items will be broken down into raw components that you can use to craft these items. And while we're on the subject, why don't we talk about weapons real quick, but mainly what are the best weapons for new players? New players in Arc Raiders are gonna start off with some pretty ineffective and low tier weapons. They're usable, but not terrific, but IMO, the best starting weapon to be on the lookout for is the Pharaoh, which I can only describe as maybe a hobo sniper rifle. It ain't pretty and it's clunky as hell, but the Pharaoh has good range and hits hard. I've played Arc Raiders in the tech test, in the alpha, the beta, and a closed capture event, and in all those events where players were just using low-level gear, the Pharaoh was across the board a very strong early performer. If everyone on your team is using one and they're all relatively accurate, you can down enemy players really quickly. At the end of the day, use whatever you want, but for starting weapons, gonna hard recommend the Pharaoh. All right, to finish things off, how about a few rapid-fire new player FAQs? I see these popping up the most in Twitch chat. Go follow me there, by the way. I stream every freaking week. What are night raids? Night raids are rare operations that will show up in-game every now and then, and you'll have a limited time to jump in. Night raids are kind of high risk, high reward. They take place at night, which makes it much harder to see enemy raiders running around. And on top of that, there's usually more Ark robots out at night, so again, just harder operations overall, but the quality of the loot is usually a little bit better. So again, high risk, high reward. What are keys? When playing Ark Raiders, you might find keys with very specific location names, like Dam Control Tower Key. These keys let you get into specific areas on a specific map. You might accidentally find these areas when playing, and again, they won't let you in if you don't have the key. If you do manage to get into those areas though, you'll usually find some pretty quality loot. Also, take note, it is really likely that you'll find keys to hidden areas on other maps, meaning you might find yourself a key for a hidden area on the Dam Battlegrounds map, but maybe you found the key itself on the Spaceport map, which is fine. Just make sure you extract with that key, and then the next time you launch into Dam Battlegrounds, maybe bring the key with you if you want. What is a Raider Hatch Key? Raider Hatch keys are slightly different. While other keys usually give you access to very specific looting areas on a given map, Raider Hatch keys are basically an emergency GTFO button. Every map has a Raider Hatch, and they look like this. Think of these as emergency extraction locations. If you have a Raider Hatch key, you can use it to open the hatch and immediately extract out of a map without having to go through the regular, very long and noisy process of calling for extraction. You should probably save those keys for emergencies and not use them willy-nilly. What skill tree path should I take? I don't think there's any wrong answer here, but I usually go into the mobility tree right away to start improving my stamina, because running out of stamina in the middle of a gunfight really freaking sucks, like a lot. However, there is a perk on the survival skill tree called in-round crafting, which allows you to craft certain items during a match and not just back at the workbench. That can be very helpful at keeping you alive in the field, and if new players wanted to immediately work towards unlocking that perk, I would completely understand. At the end of the day, you do you. If today's video helped you in any way, do me a favor, hit the like button if you feel like I've earned it, and share with a friend. I plan on doing more Ark content in the future, so ring the notification bell if you're feeling extra generous, which I do appreciate. Thank you very much for watching. Peace!